So we are very privileged, though, to have Hassan Haidar here. We're going to make this very informal, be pretty much just a fireside chat for the next 20 minutes or so. And I hope we can cover a couple of topics which I think will be interesting to you. One is just to give Hassan a chance to talk a little bit about his current work as well as his previous work in Bahrain. And then I was hoping we could maybe talk about some pleasant surprises about funding startups and angel investment groups here, some challenges or barriers, and then wrap up with what you might want to give in terms of audience advice and so forth.
Sure.
So maybe just to start, maybe tell us a little bit more, a little bit about your work, how you got here, and your work in Bahrain with the Angel Network, and now at 500 Startups.
Sure. So my background is I founded one of the first angel investment networks in the region in Bahrain, Tenmu. That was founded about 2010. So I've been actively investing in the region for the past 6 years or so. Don't let my age fool you. I've been doing this for a while. And so about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I started working more closely with 500 startups as they've expanded into the region. And so we've started to build out a team here. We've done about 30 investments on the ground here in the region. And we're also in the process of setting up a fund that's focused entirely on the Middle East and North Africa. And so we're here in a big way. 500 Startups really believes in the Middle East and North Africa as a market. We're going to be building out significant resources here. We're going to help build the ecosystem around us wherever we go, and here is no exception. In terms of what I used to do, I mean, my background, I started my own startup in 2007. I don't think Facebook was really around then, and there wasn't really any Twitter or anything like that. It was difficult to figure out how to actually accept payments from people, just the basics of running a business online. There was nothing available. Based on that and the struggles I had fundraising, I met someone who became my mentor, Sami Jalal, who then said, let's set up an angel network and let's support other founders that are having difficulties like you. And Tenmu has been pretty successful sort of story for us. One of the first networks was sort of cited as a case study by the World Bank and Babson College as well. And so we've done pretty well there. We have positive returns, which is awesome. And so with 500, we're in this in a big way. We're going to be doing a lot of investments.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about Hassan is that he's really had experience both locally and also now in Silicon Valley, and would love to kind of hear your thoughts on differences and also similarities in both the angel groups and also the founders.
So I think you shouldn't think of Silicon Valley as the mecca or the solution to all your problems. If you're here building a startup in the region, focused on the region, that's pretty big as a market. And so I don't think it's the solution to everyone to go to Silicon Valley and set up there and start fundraising. Of course, the valuations there are higher, and there's a lot more funding available, but as soon as you go there, people don't care about this region. So you'll be competing with a lot of other people doing the same sort of product and things that you're doing. So I think here we're in a wide open market. There's so much opportunity, there's so much to do that's still not done.
Yeah.
So stay here, work on a project. We're in the Arab world. We're about 350, 400 million people. It's a big ecosystem. It's a big market to go after. And you can have an exit just being in this market itself. So, I'm not one of the people that says, there's nothing here, go to Silicon Valley. No, you can be a founder and you can be successful anywhere in the world. Yeah. Silicon Valley has advantages. There's a lot more funding available there, like a lot more funding. Yeah. There's like 400 VCs and things. The other advantages are there's talent there that understands customer acquisition, marketing, and distribution. But that's a short-term sort of advantage that they have, that eventually there'll be a lot of people here that learned, and there have been people that have been learning from a lot of the things that are online. So I think really, stay in your ecosystem, build it out, and build a large business here. You don't really need to go to Silicon Valley, although, we're a Silicon Valley firm, so we can help you with those connections if you need them.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. So I'm a member of the Band of Angels, which is probably Silicon Valley's most established angel investment group. And we were just chatting before coming on stage that even though I'm a short, relative newbie here, I've only been here 2 years in the region, but I've been very impressed by the level of energy, enthusiasm, the passion, the creativity. I try to talk to my fellow members of the Band of Angels, saying, there's really an interesting market that's maybe still early stage, but very much emerging. And unfortunately, to Hassan's point, many of my colleagues will say, well, but it's kind of far away. It seems sort of in an area of the world we don't really understand. We don't really want to invest in somebody that we can't drive 45 minutes to and look in the eye. So I think there really is great opportunity here, and that unfortunately, with very few exceptions, such as 500 startups, many of the firms in the Valley, as comfortable as they are with that ecosystem, they're still very hesitant to come here. Yeah.
I think there's very few firms that are in Silicon Valley that invest more than a 2-hour drive away from where their offices are. And so they're like, wait, come to us, the best deals will come. But the thing is, I think that paradigm has sort of shifted. They don't need to come to Silicon Valley anymore. There's businesses that are being built to billion-dollar valuations without setting foot in Silicon Valley or any involvement from Silicon Valley. There's billion-dollar companies in China. There's billion-dollar companies in India that have no involvement with Silicon Valley. So I think the days of that sort of competitive advantage that Silicon Valley had are starting to wane. I think the only real competitive advantage that Silicon Valley still has is the knowledge base that's there. But that is going back to different markets in different countries and building startups there.
Yeah, reverse diaspora sort of. Yeah. I think we were chatting beforehand likewise about your new fund, and I think it'd be very exciting for the folks in the audience to hear about both the size, scope, and number of investments that you're thinking of doing.
So we really want to be the most active VC fund in the region. That is our target. We are looking to raise about $30 million to invest in about 100 to 200 startups over the next 3 years. So that puts us at between 30 to 60 investments per year. And I'm pretty confident we can. The audience in this room, the startups that are available, the deal flow that we're seeing in the region is phenomenal. So I don't think we'll have a problem finding the money to invest. I think it's a problem finding the LPs to invest in our fund and convincing them that there's an opportunity here with you guys in the audience.
So this is a really interesting point to pick up on. I think the point that was made in the first panel this morning. You heard Hala Fadel say that roughly 0.3% of GDP regionally ideally would go back into the startups, and here it's somewhat less than that. Roughly, her figure is 1.2 billion or so. Of your fund, how much do you see coming from the region versus from outside?
So most of the funding is actually coming from the region, which is quite cool. I think that we need to see more of it. I think what we need to see, Dave was here on stage last year and saying, open up your checkbooks as investors and invest in startups. I think that's important. But also, if you're too cautious to do that, invest in the funds that are available. There's so many funds that are being established, that are fundraising, that are growing. Not just us, but there's a bunch of them with really good people backing them, with great sort of founders and backgrounds, and there is opportunity. So if you, as an investor, are too hesitant to invest directly in the startups, at least support the LPs, BLPs and funds that can then go and invest and help and build the ecosystem around us. So I think really it's a matter of the investors in the region are still very cautious. Most investors have generated their wealth through very traditional means. They've built real estate and buildings and factories and trade and things like that. So when you come and tell them, put that money in something very risky like tech investments and startups, it's a very different thought process. And so I think that really, getting traditional investors more involved in the ecosystem, building out their awareness, their capabilities, the knowledge base, that's something we're working on as well.
And I think we were chatting before that this really regionally could be seen not so much as a single bottom line financial return, but also as capacity building and in a way national competitiveness or even national security in a way. I'd like to pick up on your point about the difficulty of raising funds from LPs, from limited partners, and because I think, again, this morning we were introduced, for some who may not be so familiar with the dynamic, that just as you as entrepreneurs have to raise funding, so do the VC funds, and do you want to say just a few more words about that?
So I think it might actually be harder for us as VCs to raise funding than you guys as startups. I know that's annoying, but it's pretty hard because we're raising something from other people with no real product, service, revenues, or anything. We're raising it to invest in you guys. So we need to convince them that we're the right people to manage the money, and we need to convince them that you guys are awesome and are amazing investments to be in. So that part I can kind of figure out, but it's two sales processes that we have to go through. And so it's an interesting challenge, but I think it's a short-term challenge. I don't think it's a long-term one. I think there are a lot of investors that have started to invest, and there's a lot of LPs out there that are looking at this region. I think not just from the region. I think there's a lot of development organizations. There's a lot of European investors that are looking actively into the Middle East
interesting.
for growth and things. So there is opportunity, and I think this is something that's only a short-term thing. You'll see us complaining about something else next year.
Right. Just for the two of us, maybe a quick show of hands. How many of you out there are investors or might be LPs or, okay. All right, we'll take a photo and come back and approach you later.
Well, I'll catch you after this.
Right. Any particular challenges or any particular leverage points you'd identify for ways to make the ecosystem a little bit more liquid?
I mean, wherever we're going, we're trying to build the ecosystem around us. And one of the main issues that we're facing in ecosystems around the world, I mean, we're in about 20 countries worldwide. We've invested in about 60 countries. The main gap in all of these ecosystems is on the funding and the investor side, not really on the entrepreneurs and startups. Entrepreneurs will start their businesses, they'll grow them, they'll bootstrap, they'll do something, and they'll get things done. So good founders will find a way to get things done. And the issue really is, we need to find the other side of the equation, which is the investors that will help support and grow these businesses, fund them so that they can actually scale to where they need to be. And so some of the things that we're doing is we're working on advising some governments, advising some accelerators, advising some investors who want to set up VC funds to help them be more active in the region. We also have our training programs in Silicon Valley. So we have our VC VC Unlocked program, which is a 2-week course at Stanford that we teach as 500 startups. The next one's in July if anyone's interested. We're also we started our first accelerator program that train accelerator managers. And so by doing all of this investor side of the training and by taking them to where they think people know what they're doing, which is Silicon Valley, they think we know what we're doing, but it's not necessarily true. So it's basically, it's trying to get the knowledge out and to as broad an audience as possible and trying to build ecosystems around us.
That's great.
So that's what we want to do, like as 500 startups, is we want to have thriving ecosystems, mostly on the investor side, accelerators, VC funds, angels, whatever it is, to be able to fund and support the startups that are being established in the region.
And for those who aren't familiar with 500 startups, I think they've actually outgrown their name. I think last I looked, there are about 1,500 startups they've invested in. So I think you really can make good on your claim.
Yeah, I mean, when Dave McClure, our founder, started 500 startups in 2010, he's like, the name's going to be 500 startups, and people are like, you're crazy. You're never going to be able to do that. And so in 5 years, we're like, 500. We've done 1,500. We've beaten that target. And now the idea is, we'll do 500 VCs. So we'll try to train 500 fund managers and get more on the investor side of the equation.
That's great.
Yeah, we've done a lot.
Are there any stories you might want to share with us about some anecdote or a sort of a telling moment where there might be a lesson for the audience or regionally? Was there a particular startup or a particular investor or a particular situation that sticks in your mind as something that might be worth recounting, just to share some wisdom? Yeah,
I like the things that are in my mind now are very negative things, so I don't really want to talk about them. It's not so much fun. But really, I think I'm seeing what's promising in the region is over the last year, we're seeing a lot more investors getting on board. We're seeing a lot of founders who are better at pitching, who understand what's important, which is traction, customer usage, and users. So we're seeing a lot of, from the startup side, a lot more education on how to grow and how to build businesses. And from the investor side, we're seeing a lot more activity. So, I mean, the region is promising. I think what we're at this stage is an inflection point. Where India was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, or where Southeast Asia was about 2 or 3 years ago. And those ecosystems have accelerated like anything. So if you're an investor, now is the time to really invest in this region, because I think those growth paths for funding and ecosystem building are going to be replicated across ecosystems around the world. So look at India, look at China, and apply that same sort of model to what's happening here. And I think it's only a matter of time before we see that sort of growth. That's what's accelerating around the world is the whole speed with which you can grow a business.
Yeah, just gone up.
It's phenomenal now.
Yeah.
Like 5 years ago, no one had really smartphones, no one had access to all these marketing platforms, no one had any way to reach billions of users, but now you
Code
do.
libraries, things like that,
Yeah, I mean, like in my phone, I have all these apps, and everyone else has smartphones in their pockets. Like 5 years ago, that wasn't there.
Yeah, you've got the whole marketplaces, funding mechanisms, everything.
Marketplaces. So I think now you've got Apple Store where you can reach hundreds of millions of people. You've got Google Play, so you can upload your app and have it distributed to a significant number of people. You've got advertising tools like that are targeted, like Facebook, like Twitter, like Instagram, a few other things. So there's a lot of opportunity now for you to apply different tactics for growth hacking and knowledge to really accelerate the growth of any startup anywhere in the world. You don't have to be in Silicon Valley anymore. It's not important to be there.
Which I think is a really great point. So you're based largely in Bahrain, but you're on the plane. You've seen a lot of other different ecosystems. Any lessons from Singapore, from the UK, from the Valley, from elsewhere that you think might not apply here, or that might be particularly useful?
So I think the thing is every ecosystem is unique, right? So if you we want to be the Silicon Valley of wherever, I don't think that's the right target. I think what you want to do is build your own homegrown ecosystem. Take best practices from Silicon Valley by all means. Take best practices from Europe, from India, from China, from wherever. But like whatever you do here is not going to be copy paste. And so whatever we're doing whenever we're advising people in the region, we're like, no, we're not just going to copy paste whatever we're doing in Silicon Valley. We need to make it fit to the market that's here. And so it really is, don't just say, oh, we will do what Silicon Valley does and it'll be successful. Every market is different. Every market has its own sort of unique issues and threats and opportunities. And so that's really something that we need to do. The Arab world is it's blessed in some ways and cursed in others. Cursed, of course, with all the other stuff that's happening politically. But it's blessed in ways where we have quite a large market reach. We've got an underserved market. There's not enough people that are going after the users and consumers. We've got huge mobile phone and smartphone penetration levels. We've got a huge GDP per capita in some of the countries. Like there are big markets here. You can grow a business to a significant size. And the rest of the world is ignoring us. Which is awesome for you because you can go and
captive audience.
Screw you guys, I don't care. I'll build something big, and then when it's big enough, you'll pay attention to what I'm doing.
Yep, exactly. Be an acquisition target.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many pieces of the ecosystem. Obviously, we've touched on many of them earlier in the conference today, and many of you are living pieces of it. Whether it's intellectual capital and intellectual property generation, whether it's universities, whether it's service providers, whether it's capital, smart capital, patient capital. Whether it's entrepreneurial spirit and passion. I think unfortunately we're running short on time, but maybe just as in the last minute or two, if you have any particular advice for the audience, if there are things that you want to sort of invite them to come up to you afterwards to talk about, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Sure, I think there's two pieces of advice. One is targeted to investors and the other is to startups. So startups, you're probably doing the right thing. If you don't get funding, it's not your fault entirely. It might be to some extent, but it's not entirely your fault. I think what you really need to focus on as startups is work on getting to traction, get numbers which people can't ignore, get revenues, get growth, get users, get things that people are like, look, it's working. You'd be stupid not to invest. So if you come up to me with an idea or a prototype or a product that's not been launched, I probably won't pay as much attention. But if I'm an investor, I'd be stupid to not pay attention to someone who's already got users, revenues, and growth. So if you're a startup, that's where you need to focus almost all your energy. Work on product, but that's only good enough to get you to users and people to use your product. That's more important. On the investor side of the equation, like if you're really seriously interested in investing in this region, we want to help you. So we have courses at Stanford. We have all this advisory work. You can invest directly with us or whatever. But we want to help build the investor ecosystem around us. So we're co-investing, we're providing deal flow to people, and we're happy to help in any way that you see fit. So that's sort of what we're trying to do.
Great.
Build everything out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hassan. I really appreciate your time. We have to vacate the stage for the next speakers, but thank you for your attention, and We'll be around afterwards for comments and questions.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.